Kevin Colbert, Steelers GM for at least one more draft, spoke at the NFL Scouting Combine and gave some really juicy details on things that are developing for the Steelers and some outlooks by their front office, but including that they now know that they've talked to Stephon Tuitt and he's excited to get back to football. We're going to talk about his potential return as well as what he said about Zach Banner, JuJu Smith-Schuster, and I'm going to do so with Tony Serino, who's going to be very happy to hear about Mitchell Trubisky being in their wish list. But we're going to talk about that and a lot more right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on the video, hit the subscribe button to our YouTube channel to get all of our daily content on here. We come out Monday through Friday for free. And if you want to help out the show even further, go on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review with a positive comment. You do both at the same time, and you'll get a special shout out at the end of the show. We thank you for making Locked On Steelers your first listen every day. We got my man, Tony Serino. It's Tony Wednesday.
Yeah, no, it's another Wednesday.
Still can't get it right.
I can't do it. I
don't understand it, Tony, but we love to have you here anyways. I want to start off talking about, one of the things I think that rung out the loudest about Kevin Colbert's talking at this combine that came out of this and him talking to Steeler Nation Radio. But you look at what he said about Stephon Tuitt. They said that they've talked to him. He's part of the picture coming back right now. They're still waiting to see how things play out. But they said that he has expressed a desire to play again, even used the word excited about from Tuitt's side to play again.
Yeah,
that's a very good sign. It's still unclear all the medical things that are going on with Tuitt, right? We don't know. Right. Where it is, what's happened. We haven't heard from Tuitt or anyone say what's actually going on Tuitt's end, other than, we knew his brother died and we know that there was some knee surgery and something involved there. But this is still huge for the Steelers because you saw the huge hole that it left in the Steelers defensive line last year.
Absolutely. Yeah. Two parts of this that are really good to hear. Number one, obviously getting Tuitt back is a huge deal for that defensive line, for that run defense. In particular, although, his ability as a pass rusher as well. This guy, what do you have, 11 sacks the year before?
11 sacks.
Yeah. So, he was a monster. You put him, Heyward, what TJ was able to do last year, the emergence of what Highsmith was becoming at the end of last season. Not to say that the Steelers need any more help at the pass rush position, because I think they were pretty well off last year. But, every little bit counts. But yeah, the run defense is a huge part of this. But then the other part of this is just kind of that, not wanting to, his desire to come back means that the Steelers have more solidified that defensive line, and it's not going to be something that they have to worry about this offseason, right? Look, I'm sure that they like Chris Wormley, they like Isaiah Loudermilk, right, but they weren't going to have those guys likely start again this season, like those guys, like Wormley had to do last year, and Loudermilk had to get a bunch of minutes as a rookie. So this, this kind of takes their eye off of that. There's still an eye on maybe what the future of Cam Heyward. He is getting up there in age a little bit, but with his play, you're not worried about that. And so Tuitt coming back is huge news from Colbert today.
It certainly is. And if you get him back, I did a Carter's Classroom on Stephon Tuitt, and you see the massive difference when he's in the picture versus when he's not. Because I think some people are like, oh, well, so what if he had 11 sacks? They still led the league in sacks. They got TJ. Why do they need him for that? But in the run defense, and I know, and this is what I was saying all season long about Devin Bush, even though he was struggling, when you look at the difference between Chris Wormley, Isaiah Loudermilk, Isaiah Buggs, all the guys that they kept, Henry Mondo, whoever they were trying to fill in those spots, even Montravius Adams, who did better than those guys against the run. But you saw that when teams were focused, they was like, okay, we're going to push these guys down the line. We're going to move these guys out of the way. They're not going to be forced. But when Tuitt was there last year, and against the Titans, the Ravens, some of the best run offenses of the 2020 season, he was just, nope, I'm going to get my hand inside. I'm going to use my length. And this is why they loved Tuitt from the time they drafted him. He has the strength, he has the size, he has the length, and he has the technique to control you at the point of attack, shed you, and make the play. Or if he's not making the play, he's forcing the play to someone else. And there's so many times I'm looking at all the big runs the Steelers gave up this last season, and you just see running backs being able to choose between 2 or 3 gaps because the Steelers' defensive line was just getting bullied at times, and then the guys coming up, the linebackers and the safeties trying to fill holes, they're having to guess. They're like, oh, he could go that way or he could go that way, and that always gives the advantage to the running back. But that's something that I think the Stephon Tuitt, if he's actually back, they still should consider drafting in the interior defensive line. They shouldn't push away the notion of maybe getting a Travis Jones or one of the interior defensive linemen if they're available. But it takes out to me, if the Steelers know that the thing that we don't know, that he's coming back, it takes the Jordan Davises, the Delonte Wise, the guys that are first round great defensive linemen. Those guys come off the board for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think the Steelers could probably, and maybe they would look for this anyway, right? But they probably would want to bring in someone who is like in the Javon Hargrave mold, right? Someone who can maybe play a little zero and then kind of, come over as a pass rusher on those obvious passing downs. Yeah, it's a great point about Tuitt, when it comes to just not only his gap soundness, but what the Steelers lacked last year, and it wasn't, they didn't have any gap soundness, so it wasn't like they were going to have a disruptor. But Tuitt is not just gap sound, but he can be a real disruptor.
He's a problem.
Yes, he can get upfield and tackles for loss and that kind of thing. Which the Steelers just weren't able to do that last year. I think it has been frustrating. It was funny listening to Keith Butler. I think it was a couple years back when he talked about Tuitt, because Tuitt can be that kind of disruptor, and where you want. If you're designing a run defense, what you want is guys to be gap sound. You don't want him to, if you're two gapping, right, and he's, playing one gap, but just getting right upfield. Obviously that can cause problems in the run game a little bit, but you'll take those problems, right? It's always,
right.
Yes, at times Butler got, I think, probably a little bit frustrated with Tuitt, but you'll take those problems when, he is as disruptive as he was. Yeah. So, I'm with you on still probably needing someone, but I think it's maybe not a Tuitt replacement, right? You're probably getting someone who's going to be more in the Alu type mold, or the Javon Hargrave mold in that defensive line.
Because they're also still expecting Tyson Alulu to come back next year. So this pushes things down, because Chris Wormley, I won't say Chris Wormley wasn't a bad defensive lineman. He just wasn't the starter that they paid for. And that's a huge part of this too, is that Stephon Tuitt, if he's on your books, he's taking up a huge part of your cap space.
Huge.
And when you're building a team, you need those commitments, those financial commitments in your salary cap space to actually play a big role in the team. And the Steelers last year, they were going to need to be heavily strong up front, and that'd be the best part of their team. And they never got to it, which was a huge part of that. And then they lost to Alulu. You get those guys back. And again, if you have Chris Wormley coming off the bench there, now you're saying situationally, Chris Wormley, we're not asking you to plug the run. We're asking you to do what you do best, and that is win in the pass rush when you're getting the one-on-ones, because everyone else is attracting the double teams. And that's another factor here, like you said, with Tuitt's disruptiveness. When he's out there and you're facing a 4-man front of Tuitt, Heyward, TJ, and Highsmith.
Yeah.
As an offensive line, you're thinking, crap, we have to double team maybe 2 of these guys, and then we're still getting a guy, between Heyward, Tuitt, and Watt, we're still getting one of those guys that we cannot double team. And Highsmith is a growing problem, and that's if the Steelers don't send a blitz. So that's how things start to compound. And to your point about tackles for loss, in 2020, the Steelers had TJ Watt had 23 tackles for loss, led the team by far. Vince Williams, second most at 14, right behind him, Stephon Tuitt with 10. But Vince Williams and Mike Hilton, who also was right behind him with 8, those type of guys, they feed off of those defensive linemen controlling those gaps.
No, yeah, and bring up Vince Williams there. He really was like a real missing piece last year. that kind of thumper.
Yeah, they needed a thumper. And Schobert did what he could, but that's just not his role. He's a guy that's going to provide sound help at inside linebacker. But they need a physical presence, which is another reason I think that linebackers should be something the Steelers looked at. I talked about that on Monday with Arthur Moats running the show. Tony, we got to get to other things that Kevin Colbert talked about. We'll do that in just a minute here. So stick with us on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, I got to talk to you guys about BetOnline.net. Football season may be over, but basketball season is full steam ahead for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds. And get this, you can also bet on the NFL Scouting Combine. Is the fastest 40 time in this year's Combine going to beat 4.29 seconds? You can bet money on that. The same thing goes for all the different events at the NFL Scouting Combine. Go to betonline.net to place your bets down on how this scouting class, or the NFL rookies class, will do in the Combine competitions as this week plays out. Head to the website today on your desktop or your mobile device to learn more about the trends of the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Tony Serino, and we're continuing to talk about things. Now, Tony, I have to do this before we move forward because we did this episode yesterday, and it would have had you on if you came on Tuesdays.
Yeah. If I could clear my schedule on Mondays. Yep.
Yeah, that's fine. But we talked about the quarterback situation, and the Steelers announced that they're targeting three. Or not Steelers. The Steelers didn't announce. Excuse me. A story broke. Yeah. I mean, stop myself there. Look at me trying. I'm just hurting because I have to admit something.
Yeah.
The problem here.
This is a tough one for you.
The report came out that they're considering 3 free agent quarterbacks: 1 Teddy Bridgewater, 2 Mitchell Trubisky.
Woo! Let's go.
And then 3. Who was the even? Jameis Winston.
Jameis.
But also, do you remember the days when I said his name is Jameis all the time? And
we've come a long way.
We've come a long way. But point being, I have to give you your victory lap.
I wonder if Sam Darnold is in play here.
Sam Darnold. Oh man, that was another day. But I have to give you your victory lap.
Hold on. No, you don't. Credit, there's no victory lap, Chris. Right. This is some kind of, I don't know if you're trying to like reverse jinx here. He is not signed with Pittsburgh just yet. Look,
you started the Trubisky train. I'm just trying to give the Trubisky train.
I did. It's hard. It is, and it's hard to be this good at predicting what average player the Steelers are going or fans should get behind. But no, listen, it's not a done deal yet. Let's wait till he actually signs. All right. But I do appreciate, and I welcome everyone. There's still time, by the way. If you're not yet on the Trubisky hype train, there's plenty of room. All aboard.
That's the.
Do you? By the way, do you want to jump in yet? I mean, I don't know. I know you put that poll out
right where I am.
You put the poll out. You put the. It was the Trubisky train. The Wentz wagon. By the way, appreciate you putting that poll out there so we can figure out who these Wentz people are to get them the help that they need. I mean, my goodness, who are you?
They were the smallest percentage of the group, but there was also the Jameis Winston Jeep Wranglers. That was pretty good. Mm-hmm. But you now have some serious competition because Arthur Moat started the Maserati Malik train.
I'm on that too. But that's different. That's a rookie. Listen,
a rookie.
Totally separate. Totally different. It's
very different. But to answer your question, no, I'm not hopping on your hype train because the last hype train you built was James Pierre, and you even posted the gif of that train falling off the tracks. So you can get out of here with that.
Hold on. My hype trains are batting 500, which, by the way, will be a Hall of Fame batting average. All right? So let's not get too hasty here.
He's true because he called Devin Hodges. I still remember us sitting in your car after during the 20 and several nights of the 2019 Steelers training camp,
mm-hmm.
and me just yelling like, "Oh my God, how are you picking Devlin Hodges?" And then
he wasn't even duck yet. We didn't even know about the duck thing yet.
We didn't even know it was. You just loved Devlin, and then he was duck, and then you were wearing ducks on the show, and
it was great.
Anyways, but. Another point that Kevin Colbert brought up here. Now that we've given you your chance to have your victory lap, even though you don't want your victory,
I don't want it yet. 2 weeks.
Kevin Colbert did also say that he saw that there were multiple starting quarterbacks, not several. It was multiple starting quarterbacks in this quarterback class. Now, there's been a lot said about this year's quarterback class, whether you want Malik Willis, whether you want Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, any of those guys, Bailey Zapp, all those guys in your frame. But he's saying that there's multiple starters, and there's a lot of people that are just raising their eyebrows at this statement. I even posted a meme of me with my fake glasses on. I don't even know where they're at. Oh yeah, they're right here. And I was looking at this like, oh my gosh, is that what we're doing here? But here's the thing. I think people need to remember that when Kevin Colbert's saying that there's multiple starting quarterbacks, there's several quarterbacks who have started for the Pittsburgh Steelers, not named Ben Roethlisberger over during his tenure. He's not saying that these are guys that are going to be franchise guys.
Right. Two different words. Yep.
Jimmy Garoppolo is a starting quarterback.
All right. Let's not listen. Jimmy Greatness has been to Super Bowl and an NFC Championship.
Wait. When did you start calling him Jimmy Greatness?
Jimmy Greatness. He's the second. I put out a poll on Twitter or on Facebook, like right before I left on my little hiatus there.
Oh no.
Where it was Magic Mitch or Jimmy Greatness. He's right there, 1A and 1B.
we're in trouble.
If they do trade for Jimmy G, that hype, like the hype train from Trubisky is just going to go just divert right over to Jimmy Greatness hype train.
You're scaring me.
Sorry.
Listen, this is a shout out to my man Dan Lavoie. You know who you are. He's a big Niners fan who also lives in Pittsburgh, and he's cool with the Steelers. He likes the Steelers, so he watches this show a lot. Dan's been pushing Jimmy G on me since 2019, and if he ends up here, oh man, I'm gonna have to eat so much crow because I've talked so much trash about Jimmy G over the years, and it's warranted because he's not that good. But I digress.
NFC Championship game.
He wasn't the reason, Tony. He was a passenger. But my whole thing is this: Jimmy G would be fine if he's a Steelers if you take $15 million off that salary cap.
Yeah, that is the thing. Yeah, that is
and the Steelers only give up like a 7th round pick. Like I don't give up nothing to get that dude. That's
I heard 2/4 was what I heard, and that is not that much.
No, I want my fourths. That's the fourth. Because here's the thing:
I want my fourths.
I want my fourths.
Really, Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland.
Yes, we're right there. Also, Ike Taylor, if you don't remember.
Okay, all right. You had to go back a little bit.
I had to go back to like 2003. Point being, I ain't for a Jimmy G trade, but still. Your assessment of Kevin Colbert saying this, does this say that they're getting Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett or one of these guys for sure in this draft? Because Mel Kiper also released his 2.0 mock draft, and it had the Steelers selecting a quarterback.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here, I'm like, I'm still not sold that they're going to do that unless several of those major position players are off the board.
I think if Malik Willis is there, he's there. It's going to be another Steelers on the clock for like 15 seconds type deal. I buy into that hype that they're like obsessed with Malik.
Okay.
Now the Orange, I'm with you though. I think his statement about there are multiple starting quarterbacks in this class was more just like a statement of fact rather than like an assessment of the class itself, right? Like when was the last class we got where there was legitimate like no starting caliber quarterback in the class itself? You'd have to go back to like 2014, the one with like Geno Smith and
with EJ Manuel.
That
was a rough year.
That was a bad class, but like since then, we just haven't had it. Even the bad classes, like they're the Jameis Mariota year, like those guys. I mean, one threw for 30 touchdowns in a year, and the other one went to the playoffs one year. So they were starter caliber, and both guys are going to get shots to start this year in all likelihood. So yeah, I think that for the Steelers, I think the 3 names to keep an eye on are Malik, Kenny Pickett, obviously, and then I think they probably still like Sam Howell. And this is, we're about to get into March now, where all the pro days are going to happen. It's real easy to keep track for the Steelers because, again, we know that they make a big, they make no secret about who they like, and they're always at the pro days. Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin have been to the pro day with the 1st round pick for the Steelers, going all the way back to like, who was that defensive lineman from Missouri they took way back in the day?
Ziggy Hood.
Ziggy Hood. He's the last guy that they didn't go to the pro day. So going all the way back to Ziggy, they've been Colbert and Tomlin have been, or one of the two have been at the pro day every year since. So that's, if they're at UNC, if they're at Liberty, and if they're at, I imagine they'll be at all 3, then those guys are in play. Yeah.
No, I agree. But to your point, you're looking at Stephon. You're looking at excuse me. I was going back to the first segment there, but you're looking at this quarterback class, and you're saying they do want a young arm in this mix, and I think that's the bottom line here is that there are guys who are. You're not bringing the guy that's your next franchise quarterback. You hope he can be, but you're not betting the farm that he is. What you are doing though is you're saying, hey, and this is why he said before 4 arms. This is why I said months ago. 4 quarterbacks need to be in training camp. There needs to be the veteran that they sign in free agency, which may be Mitchell Trubisky. Maybe one of those guys. Maybe that's a trade, not a sign. Stop! Don't do that. It's going to be Mason Rudolph. It's going to be Dwayne Haskins, and then it's going to be a rookie. Now, the rookie could be Malik Willis. It could be Kenny Pickett. It could be Matt Ray, but it could also be Bailey Zapp in the much later rounds. It could be Caleb Ellaby, for all we know, back in in the 6th or 7th round. But point being, they want that young arm to bring in and have the competition and see what happens. Because you never know. You want to take that lottery gamble one more time. Because the Steelers have not made the official move to go get it. Like people say, oh, they put a 1st round grade on Mason. That's saying that they thought other teams might take Mason in the 1st round. But you notice they didn't take him in the 1st or 2nd. They took him in the 3rd. They did that.
That story has always been strange to me. Yeah,
that's always a weird one. But the point being about Mason taking him in the 3rd is that was another gamble. It's like, hey, just like Landry Jones, like, you know what? if this guy can hopefully be a backup, if everything works out, maybe we have found the heir. But in both those situations, it hasn't worked out that way. Landry Jones definitely. Mason Rudolph, for the true believers that still believe in him, this is the year for him to prove it. But this would be I envision this year being another year like that, where you take a guy that doesn't cost you too much in your draft capital. That's why I'm still hesitant on just going 20 and going and getting Malik Willis or going and getting Kenny Pickett or one of those guys, because they have so many other needs. You get one of those guys, the second, third, fourth, fifth round, you're not putting the major investment in quarterback. And if you hit, great. If not, you haven't put yourself too far back. And then next year, when you want to make the move at quarterback, you can, and there will be more guys that can fit that bill.
The other thing I wondered about today, and I wish someone had asked Kevin this, is about the idea of both. So we talk about signing Mitch Trubisky. How much is it going to cost to sign Mitch? Because it sounds like there's 3 teams. By all reports at this point, there are 3 teams who are like openly interested in him: New Orleans, Washington, and Pittsburgh. Well, that's likely going to drive his price up. And the price right now for kind of a second tier, but still starting caliber quarterback is about $10 million a year. Right. So if you're signing Mitch to a deal that's like 2 years, $20 million, are you then going to go into the draft and take Malik Willis at 20? Or are you going to take Kenny Pickett at 20? I mean, or are you going to take Bailey Zapp in the second round or even the third round, right? Or if you trade 2 fourth-round picks for Jimmy Garoppolo, are you then taking Malik Willis in the first round, or are you taking Bailey Zapp in the third? Right? You're going to use that much capital on the future of your position here? That's where I would wonder, like, if one kind of precludes the other, right? Meaning that if they get Trubisky, does that in some way take them out of the running for a Malik Willis in the first round? Like you said, because of the amount of capital it's going to take. It's going to take the free agent cap, the salary cap capital to get the free agent, and then the draft capital to get a quarterback, and you can't use both, right? You're only using one.
Right.
So I'd be interested to see how they approach that.
That's my whole point here, is that they can only spend so much to get the quarterback position right now, because they have to invest at linebacker. They have to invest in the offensive line. They really should invest at the cornerback position. They have to invest.
No, they have to do at the corner. Offensive line is an interesting one. I'm not sure that they have to draft an offensive lineman.
I'm not saying with offensive, but I'm saying with either draft capital or some of that free agent money. It got to go. There's got to be additions to the offensive line next year.
You
don't think so?
Based on some of the things he talked about, I don't know. I'm all of a sudden, like, my mind is just.
Well, let's talk about some of those other things that he mentioned, because that's certainly, we're not done talking about what Kevin Colbert said at the scouting combine, because he also brought up some guys who were Steelers this past year who might not be that next year, but maybe they will be. We'll talk about who those guys he mentioned in just a minute here. But first, we got to talk to you guys about Built Bar. Of course, Built Bar is the ultimate protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. It's that time of the year where people start giving up on your New Year's resolutions, but don't do that. Don't give in just yet. Order some Built Bars. Why? Because they're going to taste great, and they're going to help you stick to your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, and you can also make sure that you get to check out the new Puffs flavors, because they're the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. Get this. They're fluffy, marshmallowy, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. You can get the cinnamon churro flavor, the coconut marshmallow flavor, or the banana cream pie, and they're all so good. One of them is going to be your new favorite, but all Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, and they're all low in calorie but high in protein. They pack just 130 calories, just 4 grams of sugar, and just 4 net carbs, but they pack 17 grams of protein. Compare that to the average candy bar that has 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. That's helping you stay on task with your diet. And there's so many flavors for you to choose from when you go to Built.com. You can see coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, double chocolate, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, all of those things available right when you go to Built.com. They're always releasing new flavors for you to check out. So go to Built.com. When you go, be sure to use the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED 15, LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your next order of Built Bars at Built.com. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Tony Serino here on a Wednesday of the show. Now, Tony, Kevin Colbert talked a little bit more about other guys who could be returning. And, a lot of people, when they've done their who are the Steelers going to cut pieces, like Mark Woolley, for example. I talked about him earlier this week, and he was on the show last week. There's a lot of assumptions that, guys, Joe Schobert's going to be cut because of his huge cap number. Zach Banner's going to be cut. These guys, there's all these assumptions. But, when talking about the team on Tuesday, Kevin Colbert said that they want to see more out of one, Kevin Dotson, which they do need to see more out of.
They do. Yeah, that one's true.
And two, Zach Banner, which you don't say that about a guy. If you're,
they want to see more about him in what? In a hopefully in a Bengals or Ravens uniform? What?
But that's my point. They still believe in Zach. And listen, Zach, I think he has the size and the tenacity to be the team's right tackle. The question is, can he be healthy? And he never got healthy last year, and that was what they were hoping to happen. And so maybe there's still that thing.
It's like IR, right? He never came off of IR.
No, I think he came off towards like the middle or late part of the season, but he was never healthy enough to get to the starting roster. Maybe he didn't come off IR. I actually don't know the answer to that off the top of my head right now. I remember talking about this earlier in the season. But point being, he was still never healthy enough to come back. If he wasn't healthy enough to come back, that's a sign to me. It's like, hey, they might still say, you know what? This guy, he's been part of our system. He's a person that we want to see succeed, and he's a guy that we still think can succeed at right tackle. Because also, you're having to wonder what's going on with Chukuma Okorafor. His contract's up. He's about to be a free agent. And as much as they do need to add to this offensive line, and I think sign some guys that are free, there's some good free agents there. They also need depth guys and depth guys that know the offensive line room. And Zach Banner would be one of those guys. Is this crazy to keep him back, Tony? I don't think it's crazy, but I do think it's a bold move by Kevin Colbert.
I mean, you're going to pay a guy $6 million to do what? I mean, this is why I said I don't know that the Steelers are actually going to. I think we all just, we just pencil in, tackle in the offensive line or in the first round, right? Like, give me a Charles Cross, give me Bernard Raymond, or one of those guys in the first round. This team's talking about bringing Zach Banner back. Remember, there was that quote last year from Tomlin where he told Banner, like, get healthy because you're my answer at right tackle. Here we are, part 2 of that. I mean, I think we all just assume Banner's gone because that cap number, it's a cool $5 million you save real easy. I mean, it's the easiest $5 million you can save. The guy just did not get healthy a year ago, coming off of an ACL. He already didn't have the best feet. It wasn't like, his smooth back pedal was the reason they were gonna bring him in, right? It was like you said, it was the size. I mean, this is a huge man.
And he did improve. Like, that's the thing. Like, when he came to the Steelers, he wasn't as finely tuned.
Yeah, he was a journeyman.
Like he was a guy that, like, honestly, if he didn't work out with the Steelers, he might not have been in the NFL much longer. But I remember, like, in those training camps, in fact, 2019, I remember he wouldn't talk to us in the media. He'd be like, nope. I'm not talking to anyone today. I'm staying focused. And he didn't talk to media until he was confirmed that he was on the roster and a big part of it. And not a big part of it, but he was on the roster and he knew that his spot was safe. That was part of who he is. And I could see that being something that, like, you know what, we like his attitude. We want to keep that around the team, but he does need to be healthy. I think that they might be looking at, like, whatever the trainers are telling them, that's what they're going to base it off of. But I am with you also. That is a big question. What does that mean for the investment in the offensive line the Steelers are going to dedicate to bringing in outside help in a group that needs it? Because there's no doubt that they were not good. Granted, Zach Banner wasn't the problem of them being not good, other than the fact that he was hurt last year. But now you're asking yourself, do they do this? But one thing I always point out to people, when you look at the Steelers' history, their construction of all the great teams they've ever had, the one position that you can look at, and they've never had a great player. They've had some good, they've had some really goods, but they've never had the elite superstar offensive tackles. They've had great centers, legendary centers. They've had great guards, running back, quarterback, wide receiver, fullback, linebacker, defensive line, safety, cornerback, all of those positions. But offensive tackle is the one that historically they haven't made. And maybe that's organizationally, that's just how they've operated. They don't value the position that much. But Tony, I still think that it needs to be something that they truly do value.
See right now an opening day offensive line that looks like this. Left tackle, Dan Moore. Left guard, Kevin Dotson. Center, Kendrick Green. As much as fans, I think, are going to want to move him to guard. I mean, I just don't think the Steelers are the kind of team that are ready to just give up after 1 year. So I think they're going to try and make that thing work. Right guard, LeGlue, and right tackle, Banner. And And I look, and here's how this can happen. I mean, look, yes, free agency will change this, and they can bring in some names in free agency. But in the draft, you could go quarterback round 1, corner round 2, linebacker round 3. Bang, your 4th round pick. Yeah, sure, you can add an offensive lineman, but he's probably not going to start, or maybe he's in competition with Banner on that right side. But it's not the kind of offseason that all of us fans have imagined. The Steelers probably have right now 3 offensive linemen that they still like. They obviously like Dan Moore. He is going. I mean, you could just write that in pen today. There's nothing that's going to move them off Dan Moore being the left tackle. At center, I think it's a little more murky, but again, I just don't think they're going to admit that mistake after year 1. And then, Kevin Dotson and all the stuff that happened. There's another guy didn't come off of IR, by the way. Remember, they actually did let him start practicing again, and then it just kind of expired. Like the window to bring him back expired, and that was a weird thing, by the way. The whole Dotson, and remember the reports in the offseason that the Steelers were upset with him. That was a whole weird thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, this report that not this report, this Kevin Colbert saying we're going to bring Zach Banner back and we expect more out of him does lead me into a future. I don't think it's an incredibly likely future, but I think there is a future in which the offensive line that ended the season is a very similar offensive line that they begin the season with, meaning that it's LeGlue as still as your starter, and then Zach Banner at right tackle. And the Steelers address all the other needs we've talked about: corner, linebacker, quarterback first.
That's a tough bit. I have to think that there's some sort of investment. If it's not a guard or a guard who could play center, somebody in that realm.
Just give me a Zion Johnson. I'm not asking for much.
Right. Just if you got a Zion Johnson who looked good at the Senior Bowl, and like that's the thing. Like they could get a guy like that and say, okay, we've at least added to the room. But I still think that if you're going into next year, that a big part of what you have to do is on the offensive line. You need to run the ball. And Kevin Colbert also said, Najee Harris didn't have the start that we hoped he had. The man had 1,600 all-purpose yards and 10 touchdowns with no offensive line, with a non-existent vertical passing game, and only fumbled once in the playoffs.
Yeah, but he did. But I think the raw numbers are nice, but he did have the second most touches in the league, right?
Agreed. But he had to, and I think that's another sign that is if you gave him just a decent offensive line, and you gave him just the threat of we could throw the ball down the field a little bit, not elite, but just like no one feared Ben's deep ball, going into this season, and that's what opens up the box. That's where I'm at, Tony. Is that if you invest in this offensive line, then those touches turn into more yards. And you saw even when he was getting hit 3-4 yards in the backfield, he wasn't fumbling until he got that injury and then came back really quickly for the Chiefs game in the playoffs. I have to think that there's some investment into that group, and maybe this is all a ruse. Maybe this is just Kevin Colbert's way of just circumventing all of us. And as Mark Capone pointed out, they have a lot of money that the Steelers could open up with restructures. He estimated like $80 million they could get up to if they really went to work on that. And then you're looking at that as like, okay, well, maybe you could keep one of those guys you thought you would cut, whether it's Joe Schobert or Zach Banner or Derek Watt, excuse me, and that's where I'm at. Is like maybe they just see like, you know what, we'll keep one veteran offensive lineman in the room and we'll add these other guys in, and maybe that's their plan. But I have a hard time seeing them making no additions there because they need to know that it has to be a lot better.
Yeah, and by additions you mean like starting caliber additions, right? Because obviously they're going to add depth. They're going to have to add depth.
But I mean, at least one guy, maybe two guys who have good starting experience in the NFL and can be a guy that kind of sets the whole line straight. Like, hey guys, let's go, let's do this, let's get this done. And that's what they hope Trey Turner would be. But again, they got Trey Turner way after the fact. They only got him because David DeCastro got hurt or realized I'm not coming back, and that was a late thing. Now you have a chance to be in front of this, both for free agency and the NFL draft. That's not just this has to be part of their plan. I just have to think that this is either a smokescreen or this is them saying Zach Banner's part of that plan.
Right. It's one of those things where it's like, look, if we're just going to throw darts at the wall at a position, offensive line is the one. Like we need to hit, right? So the more darts we have, the better. Why would we cut? They can create the room in other ways. So why cut a guy when we want to bring him back? Hopefully we see more out of him. Maybe he turns into a starting caliber guy for us. That'd be great. But yeah, maybe they're not. Maybe I'm reading too much. They're not pinning their hopes that he's going to be the starter. It's just, hey, let's just leave another option there for us. The same way like Haskins is coming back, right? I mean, I don't think anyone expects Haskins is going to be the starter, but no reason to cut Haskins, right? Let's bring him back and maybe he pops and maybe he turns into a starting caliber quarterback.
That would be I think that's
It's a fantasy land, but
right. I can't with you, and I'm surprised. I started to think that you were about to build a Dwayne Haskins.
Oh no.
Okay, yeah.
I'm
crazy. I'm not that.
I was off that. I was on the if there's such thing as like a hate train, because I was basically like pumping the brakes on all the Haskins stuff very very early on. So no, don't get it. Trubisky Garoppolo, mostly Trubisky right now, but I'm leaving the door open. Leaving the door open to Jimmy greatness if Kevin Colbert wants to make that trade. 2-4 is not a big deal.
You're ridiculous. I can't.
Matt Canada wants to run more RPO, the Shanahan system, right? Listen, it's a very similar thing to what this by the way was in a report today. So listen, that's if he's gonna get you a quarterback who knows that system. Matt Ryan.
I'm sorry, you said who? I'm over here making sure that our levels are good. I'm managing the show, and I'm just checking something, and I hear you say, Matt, you dirty dog. And for those who don't know, way back when, way back in 2019, in fact, when we all leading into that year, we got into a major argument on this show where Tony said that Matt Ryan is a better quarterback than Ben Roethlisberger. He was completely wrong.
In 2019, he was a better quarterback than Ben Roethlisberger. Yes, correct.
I'm gonna keep it.
Statement of fact.
I'm gonna keep just leaving out that part of the conversation. But this guy, we had Miss Ye, one of our most loyal fans,
that's where I turned into Tony the Hater. That's why Tony the Hater existed.
You became Tony the Hater. That was your name for a while. But
that's right.
Here you go, bringing up Matt Ryan, who the Falcons are trying to figure out how do we move on from this.
His $45 million cap hit is too low, if you ask me.
It's too valuable to them. But anyways, Tony, that's our show. We got to get out of here. We're running way over time. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. You're always a pleasure, and you're always exciting to have on the show. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
You can follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country, and then you can find me on AFC North Talk. It's a roundtable show all about the AFC North. So I represent the Pittsburgh Steelers on that show. We are back next week. We're going to preview free agency and do a review of some of our hot takes, which, by the way, I had a hot take way before the season. I said Jamar Chase would have more drops than Deontay Johnson and Eric Ebron combined.
Oh, boy.
And I was right. Thank you, Eric Ebron, for getting injured midseason.
I was going to say, that's the only way that worked, was that Eric didn't play half the year. But thank you so much, Tony. Like I said, it's always fun to have you on the show. My name's Chris Carter. I'm the host of the show, Locked On Steelers Podcast. You can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button to our YouTube channel for more of our content. If you want to get a shout at the end of the show, give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and leave us a positive comment with your review, and then you'll get that shout out. Thanks again to Tony. We'll be back tomorrow for the Thursday edition of the Locked On Steelers podcast with my man Wes Euler, who's live on Radio Row with Steeler Nation Radio. I want to get his thoughts on how things are playing out down there at the NFL scouting combine. We'll see you tomorrow.
Has Wes picked a hype train yet?
I don't think he has.
I'll text him. Don't worry. I'll get him. I'll get him ready for tomorrow's show.
We'll see which one he picks. We're gonna do another poll with Maserati Malik in it now because I want to see how
it's different. It's different. It's a rookie. It's totally different. I might vote for Malik. You never know.
Yeah, you're silly. Anyways, thanks again, Tony. Thanks again to you listeners. We're back on your screens and in your ears tomorrow, right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.